Ryan lived far from the noise of the colony center. His small shelter stood near the wide valley where machines worked day and night to keep the farms alive. He was not a man of many words, and most settlers knew him only as the quiet worker who fixed broken engines and kept to himself. Each morning he checked the water pumps and power units. Each evening he sat outside, watching the pale sky of the strange planet turn dark with twin moons shining above. It was on such an evening, when the light faded and the valley grew still, that Ryan heard a sound that did not belong. At first he thought it was the wind, a soft cry carried from the forest. But then it came again, sharper and filled with fear. Ryan stood from his seat, his tools still in his hands, and listened. The sound pulled at him in a way he could not ignore. He walked toward the edge of the forest, where shadows stretched long between tall trees. The settlers often warned one another not to wander there at night. Strange beasts lived among those trees, and some who entered never returned. Ryan knew the dangers, yet the cry came again, weaker now, and his feet moved without hesitation. The forest air was damp and heavy with the smell of moss. Branches brushed against his shoulders as he followed the sound deeper inside. He carried a small lamp, its glow trembling as he moved. The cries grew softer, and for a moment he feared he was too late. But then he saw a shape lying between the roots of a tree. It was small, no larger than a child of 6 years, though its form was not human. The skin shone faintly under the lamp, a pale silver that caught the light like water. The body was thin, the arms curled tightly, and the face was wet with tears. 2 large eyes blinked at him, wide and filled with pain. The creature's chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. Ryan crouched beside it. He spoke softly, though he knew it might not understand. "Easy now. I will not hurt you." The little one flinched at his voice but did not run. A wound cut across its leg, bleeding slowly. Ryan tore a strip from his work shirt and pressed it against the injury. The child whimpered but stayed still, watching him with frightened eyes. When Ryan lifted the small body into his arms, it weighed less than he expected. The creature pressed its face against his chest, as if searching for safety. Ryan felt its trembling and knew he could not leave it there. The forest was no place for something so helpless. The walk back to the shelter was slow. Every sound in the dark made Ryan turn his head, ready for danger. Yet nothing came, and soon the lights of the colony outpost appeared between the trees. When he reached his shelter, he laid the child on his bed and covered it with his blanket. The creature's eyes followed his every move. Ryan set a small bowl of water near the bed. The child reached out weakly, dipping its fingers and touching the water as if testing it. Then it drank, small sips at first, then more eagerly. Ryan gave a faint smile. "You are safe now," he whispered, though he knew again that the words were not important. What mattered was the tone, the care. Through the night Ryan cleaned the wound and wrapped it again with fresh cloth. The child drifted in and out of sleep. Sometimes it stirred and reached for his hand. Ryan let it hold his fingers, feeling the tiny grip tighten as if afraid he would vanish. He sat awake long after the moons had crossed the sky. Thoughts troubled him. He had never seen this kind of being before. It was not from the colony, nor from any traveler he had met. If the others discovered what he had brought into his shelter, they might demand he hand it over. Some would say it was dangerous. Some might even harm it out of fear. Ryan looked down at the child, sleeping peacefully at last, and shook his head. No matter what the others thought, he would not abandon it. Morning came, and with it the stir of the settlement. Workers moved machines across the valley, and voices carried in the cool air. Ryan stepped outside for a moment, breathing deeply as the sun climbed over the hills. He knew this day would be different. The quiet life he had lived was already gone. Something new had begun when he walked into the forest and found the silver-skinned child. When he returned inside, he saw the child awake, sitting up with the blanket wrapped around its shoulders. Its eyes were fixed on him, no longer only filled with fear but also with something else, trust. The small one raised a hand as if greeting him. Ryan knelt by the bed and nodded. Yes. You will be all right. In that moment, though he could not explain why, he felt a bond form between them. It was as if fate had placed the child in his path, and his life would never again be the same. The morning passed quietly in Ryan's shelter. The silver-skinned child sat on his bed, watching him move about the room. It did not speak, yet its eyes followed each of his actions with curiosity. When he poured water into a cup, it leaned forward. When he lit the small stove, it tilted its head as if studying fire for the first time. Ryan prepared a simple meal of bread and dried fruit. He broke a piece and placed it near the child. At first, the little one hesitated, sniffing the food as though unsure. Then it took a small bite. The taste seemed strange, but hunger overcame doubt, and soon the food was gone. Ryan felt relief. At least the child could eat what he had. He spent the rest of the day repairing a broken power cell. The child wandered the room with slow steps, touching the walls and the tools. Sometimes it stumbled, still weak from its injury, and Ryan quickly steadied it. When it grew tired, it returned to the bed, curling under the blanket like a small animal seeking warmth. By evening, the news had spread through the colony. People had seen Ryan entering the forest the night before and returning with something in his arms. Curious settlers gathered outside his shelter, whispering among themselves. When Ryan opened the door, 3 men stood there. They were neighbors who often worked near the valley. One of them, a tall man with sharp eyes, stepped forward. Ryan, people say you brought something strange from the forest. Is it true? Ryan did not answer at once. He glanced back at the bed where the child sat, half hidden by the blanket. Then he faced the men. I found a child hurt and alone. I could not leave it there. The tall man frowned. That is no human child. Who knows what it is? You should report it to the council. Another man added, yes, it might bring danger. We cannot risk the colony. Ryan shook his head. It is only a child. Look at it. Do you see harm in those eyes? The men exchanged uneasy looks. The third man, older and softer in tone, sighed. We do not know where it came from, Ryan. If others come looking for it, they may not be friendly. You should be careful. With that warning, they left, but their words spread. By nightfall, more settlers whispered of the alien child. Some feared an attack. Some demanded Ryan hand it over to the council for safety. Inside his shelter, Ryan sat by the bed. The child held his hand, sensing his worry. Its eyes were wide, reflecting the lamp's glow. It made a soft sound, almost like a hum, and pressed closer to him. Ryan felt the tension in his chest ease a little. You trust me, don't you? He murmured. Then I will protect you. The next morning, the council summoned him. The small chamber was filled with the leaders of the colony, men and women who carried the weight of keeping everyone safe. At their center sat the governor, a stern woman with gray hair and steady eyes. Ryan, she began, we have heard the reports. You brought an unknown being into your home. Is this true? Yes, Ryan answered firmly. Do you know what it is? No, I only know it is young, and it was hurt. I could not leave it to die. The council members murmured among themselves. Some looked uneasy, others curious. The governor raised her hand for silence. Ryan, our colony is small. We live under constant threat from this world's dangers. If this child belongs to another people, they may come searching. We must be ready for what that means. For now, we ask that you surrender it to our care. We will keep it under watch until we know more. Ryan's jaw tightened. He thought of the child's frightened eyes, of its hand gripping his. To give it up now would be a betrayal. With respect, he said, the child trusts me. If you take it away, it will be afraid again. Let me keep it. I will care for it until we understand the truth. The chamber grew silent. Finally, the governor spoke. Very well. But know this, Ryan. If danger comes because of this, the responsibility will be yours. Ryan bowed his head. I accept. When he returned to his shelter, the child greeted him with a faint smile, a small change that warmed his heart. He sat beside it, giving water and food. For a while, the worries of the council faded, replaced by the simple joy of seeing the child grow stronger. But peace did not last long. That night, strange lights appeared in the sky. Some settlers thought it was a storm. Others feared it was something worse. Ryan stepped outside and watched as glowing shapes drifted across the stars, silent and slow. His heart quickened. He knew at once they were not storms. They were ships. The colony bells rang in alarm. People rushed through the streets, shouting to one another. Children were pulled inside, doors were barred, weapons were readied. Ryan turned back toward his shelter, fear rising in his chest. Inside, the child stood near the window, staring at the lights above. Its eyes were wide, but not with fear. Instead, they shone with recognition. Ryan understood then. The child had not simply been lost in the forest. It had come from those ships. And now, those who sought it had arrived. He felt the weight of his promise press heavy on him. The council had warned him. The settlers had feared this moment. But none of them mattered as much as the small figure now looking to him for safety. Ryan closed the door, set the lock, and whispered with steady voice, no matter what happens, I will not let them take you. The night outside grew louder with shouts and the hum of engines. The first conflict had begun. The colony had never known such fear. The lights in the night sky did not fade away like passing storms. They grew brighter, larger, and closer. From the valley floor, the settlers watched with wide eyes as massive shapes broke through the clouds. Ships, dark and heavy, moved with slow power above the land. Their engines hummed deep, making the air itself tremble. Ryan stood outside his shelter with the child beside him. The little one clutched his sleeve, its silver eyes reflecting the glow of the alien vessels. All around them, voices rose in panic. Families hurried into shelters, guards rushed to the walls with weapons, and the bells rang without pause. The first ship descended near the colony edge. Dust and wind whipped across the valley as it landed, its hull shining with strange symbols. The ground shook beneath its weight. From its side, a ramp lowered, and figures stepped out. They were tall, armored in silver and black. Their skin carried the same pale glow as the child's, though their eyes were sharp with command. They moved in formation, each step measured and strong. At their center walked a figure draped in a cloak that flowed like liquid metal. Gasps spread through the settlers. They knew at once this was not a simple search party. This was an army, and its leader walked among them. The governor of the colony, flanked by her guards, stepped forward to meet the strangers. Her voice, steady though strained, carried across the crowd. "You come uninvited into our land. State your purpose." One of the armored figures answered in a tongue that twisted like music. Few could understand, but the meaning became clear when the child in Ryan's arms stirred, its face lighting with recognition. The leader of the aliens raised a hand. At once, the soldiers parted, and a tall woman stepped forward. Her presence silenced all. She was taller than any human there, her crown of silver rising high, her cloak shimmering in the sunlight. Her eyes, cold and commanding, swept across the humans as if they were nothing more than dust in her path. The governor repeated her question, this time louder. "What do you want here?" The queen's voice rang out in clear words, translated by a device at her side. "You have something that belongs to me. My child." The crowd erupted in cries of shock. Faces turned toward Ryan's shelter, where the small figure now stood half hidden. The child clung to Ryan's arm, unwilling to move. Ryan's chest tightened. He understood now. The silver-skinned child he had saved was no ordinary being. It was the heir to a throne, and the woman before them was its mother, a queen of stars. The queen's eyes narrowed as she looked upon him. "Human, you carry what is mine. Return my blood to me at once, and you will be spared." The governor turned, her gaze heavy upon Ryan. "You must step forward," she said. "This is beyond us. Give the child to its people." But the child shook its head fiercely and pressed against Ryan's side. Its small hands clutched his shirt as though letting go would mean losing everything. Ryan felt its fear, and his resolve hardened. He stepped forward, his voice strong though his heart raced. "I found your child hurt and alone in the forest. I gave it water, food, and shelter. I kept it safe when no one else would. And now it does not wish to leave me." The settlers gasped at his boldness. To stand against a queen with such power was unthinkable. The queen's gaze sharpened. For the first time, her proud face showed a flicker of surprise. "You dare speak of wishes, human? You dare claim to know my child's heart?" "I do not claim," Ryan replied. "I only see what is before me. It does not want to leave. That is truth." A long silence followed. The queen studied the child, who refused to meet her eyes, instead hiding behind Ryan's arm. Murmurs rippled among her soldiers. The queen lifted her hand. At once, two guards stepped forward, moving to take the child by force. "No," Ryan said firmly. He shifted his stance, placing himself between the soldiers and the child. "If you want to take it, you will have to go through me." The crowd of settlers gasped again. Some shouted for him to stand down. Others watched in awe, unable to believe a single human would defy a queen's command. The soldiers paused, uncertain. The queen raised her hand once more, halting them. Her eyes locked on Ryan, searching his face. There was no fear in his expression, only stubborn resolve. At last, she spoke. "You are bold, human. Bold, and foolish. But perhaps there is more here than I first thought." She lowered her hand and signaled her guards to withdraw. "Very well. If my child clings to you, then you will remain close. But do not mistake this for mercy. You will be tested, and you will be judged. Fail, and your life is nothing." With that, the queen turned, her cloak flowing behind her. The soldiers followed, returning to their ship with measured steps. The crowd slowly began to disperse, though fear lingered in every eye. The governor approached Ryan with grave expression. "You do not know what you have done. You have bound yourself to a queen who holds the power to destroy us all." Ryan held the child closer. "I only did what I had to. I could not abandon it." The governor sighed. "Then may your courage carry you further, for we may all depend on it." That night, as the alien ship stood watch in the skies above, Ryan sat inside his shelter with the child resting against him. The events of the day weighed heavy on his mind. He had defied a queen, faced her soldiers, and yet still the child remained by his side. He looked down at its sleeping face and whispered, "Whatever comes, I will stay with you." The sound of engines hummed through the valley, a reminder that the queen and her army had not left. The arrival had changed everything. The days of quiet life were gone, and a greater story had begun. The colony woke under a heavy sky. The alien ships still hovered above the valley, their shadows long and dark against the rising sun. Every settler felt the weight of their presence. Work slowed, voices stayed hushed, and children were kept inside. All eyes watched the skies, fearing what the day would bring. Ryan had little time to think. At dawn, soldiers in silver armor came to his shelter. They did not speak, but their meaning was clear. They gestured for him to follow, and when the child reached for his hand, they gave no objection. The queen had summoned him. With the child holding tight to his arm, Ryan walked through the silent colony. Settlers watched from doorways and windows, their faces filled with unease. Some whispered prayers, others shook their heads as if already mourning his fate. Ryan ignored them. His focus was only on the small hand gripping his own, warm and trembling. The soldiers led him across the valley to where the Queen's flagship had landed. The ship rose like a mountain of metal, its surface alive with shifting lights. A ramp stretched from its open hold, and guards stood in lines on either side. Ryan climbed the ramp with steady steps, the child close beside him. Inside, the air was cool and filled with a faint hum. Strange symbols glowed on the walls, and the floor shone like polished stone. The soldiers guided him into a grand chamber. At its center stood the queen, her cloak flowing around her like liquid silver. Her eyes were cold, sharp as blades. When Ryan entered, she raised her hand, and the chamber fell silent. "Human," she said, her voice carrying through the hall. "You stand before me because you hold what belongs to my blood. I am Queen of the Silver Line, ruler of 1,000 worlds. None have ever defied me and walked free. Yet you dared to stand between me and my child." The words struck like steel, but Ryan did not bow. He kept his back straight, his eyes steady. "I only wished to protect the child. Alone in the forest, it was hurt. I could not turn away." The queen studied him, her gaze hard. "Many would have left it. Many would have seen weakness and walked past. Yet you carried it. You fed it. You placed your life at risk. Why?" Ryan hesitated. The true answer was simple, almost too simple for words. "Because it needed me," he said at last. "And I could not ignore that." A murmur spread among the gathered soldiers. The queen lifted her hand for silence again. She stepped closer, her height towering over him. Her voice lowered, but it carried even more weight. "My child chooses you over its own blood. That is a wound to my pride, a challenge to my rule. Do you understand what you have done?" Ryan looked down at the child. Its wide silver eyes gazed up at him with trust, and its small hand held fast to his. He lifted his chin and met the queen's gaze. If caring for a child is a challenge to your rule, then so be it. I will not let go. The queen's eyes narrowed, but behind the sharpness there was something else, something almost hidden curiosity. She turned, her cloak sweeping across the floor. Very well. If you wish to keep the bond, you will prove yourself. You will show me your worth, human, and show the strength that makes my child cling to you. If you fail, you will die, and no one will speak your name again. She raised her voice, commanding the hall. Prepare the trials. This human will be tested. Gasps rippled through the soldiers. The trials were ancient, spoken of in whispers. They were not meant for humans, but for warriors of the queen's own people. To face them was to stand against storms, beasts, and death itself. The child cried out, pulling at Ryan's hand as if to beg the queen to stop. But the queen did not falter. She stepped down from the dais and placed her hand on the child's head. For the first time, her voice softened, though her words remained heavy. You are of my blood. You are heir to my line. If you choose this human, then he must prove he is worthy of such a bond. Only then will I allow it. The child shook its head and clung tighter to Ryan. The queen's face hardened once more. She turned back to her guards. Take them. Prepare for the first trial. Ryan and the child were led from the chamber. The corridors of the ship wound like rivers of light, leading them deeper within. At last, they reached a smaller chamber, where guards handed Ryan a simple staff. No blade, no shield, only wood and iron. He looked at the weapon, then at the child who stared up at him with fear. He knelt and placed a hand on its shoulder. Do not be afraid. I will face whatever comes. I promise to keep you safe, and I will not break that promise. The child's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. It pressed its forehead against his chest for a moment, then stepped back as the guards pulled Ryan toward the trial chamber. When the doors opened, a rush of hot air struck his face. The chamber beyond was vast, its floor cracked with burning stone, its walls alive with firelight. Strange beasts stirred in the shadows, their eyes glowing red. The trial had begun. Ryan gripped the staff and stepped forward. He had no armor, no army, no queen's command. Only his will, his hands, and the promise he had made. From high above, the queen watched through crystal screens. Her eyes followed every movement. She wanted to see if this human's courage was real or if it would break under the weight of her world. The child stood beside her, its small hands pressed against the glass, whispering softly as if its voice could reach Ryan across the fire. In that moment, a strange silence fell over the queen's heart. She had ruled through power and fear for many years, but now she saw something new, something she could not easily understand. A human who stood against her, not with armies or weapons, but with nothing more than stubborn courage and a heart unwilling to let go. She whispered to herself, almost too low for others to hear. Perhaps there is more to this human than I thought. The trial flames roared higher, and Ryan stepped deeper into the arena. His judgment had begun. The heat of the chamber pressed against Ryan's skin as he stepped forward with the staff in his hands. Flames cracked from the walls, and the air shimmered like water. The ground was uneven, broken into sharp ridges and pits of glowing stone. He could hear the hiss of unseen beasts moving in the shadows. The trial had begun. High above, the queen and her guards watched through crystal panels. The child stood at the front, its small hands pressed flat against the glass, eyes locked on Ryan. It made no sound, but its trembling body spoke of fear. The queen's gaze shifted between her heir and the human below, her face unreadable. From the far side of the chamber, a creature stepped into view. Its body was covered in scales that glistened red in the firelight. Long claws scraped against the stone, and its jaws dripped with heat. The beast lowered its head and growled, the sound deep and heavy. Ryan tightened his grip on the staff. He had no armor, no shield, no one at his side. Only his will. He steadied his breathing, remembering the quiet nights in the valley, the simple work of fixing machines. None of that mattered now. Only the promise he had made. The beast charged. Its weight shook the ground, its claws striking sparks as it leapt. Ryan stepped aside at the last moment, swinging the staff with all his strength. The blow struck its shoulder, forcing the beast to stumble, but the wood cracked under the impact. Ryan barely had time to roll away as the beast struck again, its jaws snapping inches from his arm. He rose, sweat running down his face. The staff was damaged, but still in his hands. The beast circled him, its glowing eyes fixed on its prey. Ryan's chest rose and fell with heavy breaths, but he kept his ground. "Come then," he muttered under his breath. "I will not run." The beast lunged once more. Ryan planted his feet, swung the staff low, and struck its leg. The blow made the creature stumble, and Ryan followed with a strike to its head. The beast roared in pain, thrashing wildly, but Ryan did not stop. He struck again and again, each blow fueled by the memory of the child clinging to him, trusting him. At last, the beast fell. Its body lay still, smoke rising from its scales. Ryan stood over it, chest heaving, staff broken nearly in half. Above, the soldiers murmured in surprise. Few had expected the human to survive even the first challenge. The queen raised her hand, silencing them. Her eyes remained fixed on Ryan, searching for weakness, yet finding only determination. The floor shifted. New passages opened in the walls, and hot winds blew through. From the openings came a new threat: small, fast creatures with sharp wings. They swarmed in groups, their screeches cutting through the chamber. Ryan barely had time to gather himself before they fell upon him. He swung the broken staff, striking one from the air, then another. But there were too many. Claws raked his arms, wings beat against his face, and his strength began to fade. He stumbled back, nearly falling into a pit of glowing stone. His vision blurred, and pain burned through his body. For a moment, he feared he could not continue. Then he heard the child's voice. High above, it cried out, its small hands striking the glass as it called to him. Ryan could not understand the words, but he knew the meaning. Do not give up. Do not fall. He gritted his teeth and pushed forward. With a roar of his own, he swung the staff in wide arcs, striking the creatures again and again. One by one, they fell. His arms shook with exhaustion, his breath ragged, but he did not stop until the last creature lay broken on the ground. The chamber grew silent once more. Ryan stood swaying, blood running down his arms, the staff splintered in his grip. He had nothing left, yet he still stood. The queen's eyes narrowed. She had seen warriors fall to the trials with far more strength than this human. Yet here he was, refusing to yield. Her gaze shifted to her child, who pressed its face against the glass with tears shining in its eyes. The bond between them was clear. She raised her hand again, and the walls of the chamber shifted. The fire dimmed, the floor smoothed, and the doors opened. Guards entered, lifting Ryan by the arms and carrying him out. He was taken to a healing chamber where strange lights passed over his wounds. Cool mist soothed his skin, and bandages were wrapped around his arms and chest. The pain lessened, though the exhaustion remained. Through it all, the child never left his side. It held his hand tightly, refusing to let go. When Ryan could finally sit up, the queen entered. The guard stepped aside as she approached. Her eyes were as sharp as ever, yet her voice carried a different tone. "You faced the first trials and survived," she said. "Few of my own kind could claim the same. You fought with nothing but a broken staff, yet you did not falter. Tell me, human, what gave you such strength?" Ryan looked at the child, then back at the queen. "I had no choice. It trusted me. I could not fail." The queen studied him for a long moment. Then she spoke softly, almost to herself. "Loyalty beyond reason. Courage without measure. Strange traits for one so small among the stars." She turned, her cloak trailing behind her. "The trials are not yet complete. You will face more. But already, you have shown more than I expected." When she left, Ryan leaned back against the bed, his hand still held tightly by the child. He felt the weight of what lay ahead, yet he also felt a strength within him he had not known before. He closed his eyes, whispering to himself, "I will endure. For you, I will endure." The child pressed its small head against his arm, and for the first time since the trials began, Ryan allowed himself to rest. The halls of the great palace trembled with a sound that did not belong. It was not the rumble of the queen's trials nor the shifting of stone and fire. It was sharper, colder, like the strike of iron upon iron. Shouts echoed through the corridors, and the steady rhythm of marching feet grew closer. Ryan sat in the healing chamber, still weak from his wounds, when the sound reached him. His eyes opened, and he turned to the child who sat at his side. The little one stiffened, ears twitching as it too heard the noise. Fear crossed its face, and it clung to his arm. Moments later, a guard burst through the door. His armor was scorched, and his breathing came in ragged gasps. "They are here," the guard said. "The rival clan has broken the gates." The words struck like thunder. Even without full knowledge of this world's ways, Ryan understood. The palace was under attack. The queen entered soon after, her steps swift, her face carved from stone. She looked at Ryan, then at her child. For the first time, the calm mask of command slipped, and something like fear passed through her eyes. "They come for me," she said. "And for the heir. They will not leave while either of us lives." The child whimpered and pressed closer to Ryan. He felt its small hands tremble against him. His own body ached, his arms wrapped in bandages, but the sight stirred something deep inside him. He rose to his feet. "Then let me stand with you," he said. The queen regarded him for a long moment, as if weighing his worth. Then she gave a sharp nod. "Very well. But know this, human. If you fall, no one will carry you from the field." Ryan tightened his grip on the broken staff that had been set against the wall. It was no true weapon, but it was what he had. The queen led them through the palace, her guards forming a shield around her and the child. Smoke filled the air, and the walls shook with each strike from outside. Through wide arches, Ryan saw flashes of battle blades clashing, fire leaping, soldiers falling. The rival clan had come in force. Their armor was black, their banners torn, their weapons sharp and cruel. They moved with hunger in their eyes, cutting down all who stood in their path. The queen's forces held the main hall, but they were pressed hard. The rival leader, tall and cloaked in dark metal, stood at the front. His voice boomed across the hall. The throne will fall. The child will be mine. None can stop it. Ryan felt the child clutch tighter at his side. Something inside him hardened. He stepped forward, placing himself between the little one and the advancing enemy. The rival leader laughed when his eyes fell upon the human. Is this the Queen's last hope? A broken creature from a distant world? This is no warrior. Ryan lifted the cracked staff. His voice was steady. I am enough. The enemy surged forward. Soldiers rushed through the hall, blades flashing. The Queen's guards met them with shields raised, the clash ringing like thunder. Ryan stood at the center, the child behind him. The first soldier reached him. Ryan swung the staff, striking the warrior's head with a force that sent him crashing to the ground. Another came, then another. He moved with a strength he did not know he still had, each strike born from one thought alone: protect the child. His arms burned, his wounds tore open anew, but he did not stop. He blocked a blade with the staff, shoved another foe back with his shoulder, struck a third in the chest so hard that the warrior staggered away gasping. Above the chaos, the Queen's voice rang out, sharp and commanding. She called her soldiers to hold the line, to push back, to remember the air. Her presence gave them strength, and for a moment the tide slowed. But the rival leader himself advanced. His armor shone like firelight on steel, his weapon a great blade that hissed with heat. He cut down 2 guards in a single swing, his eyes locked on the Queen and her child. Ryan stepped forward to block his path. The rival leader sneered. You stand in my way, human. You will break. The great blade swung. Ryan raised the staff to block, but the strike shattered it in 2. The force knocked him to his knees. Pain flared through his arms, and the broken wood clattered to the ground. The rival lifted his blade high for the final strike. The child cried out, the sound piercing through the chaos. Ryan looked back once, saw its wide eyes filled with fear, and felt something ignite inside him. He rose with a roar, grabbing the nearest shard of the staff. As the blade came down, he stepped inside the swing and drove the sharp end of the wood into the rival's side. The strike caught the enemy off guard. The rival leader staggered back, howling in pain. The Queen seized the moment. She lifted her hand, and from the ceiling above, light burst forth. A weapon of her people, forged in crystal and fire, dropped into her grasp. She struck the rival with all her power, the light slicing through his armor. The rival leader fell, his weapon crashing to the floor. Silence spread through the hall as his soldiers froze. Without their leader, their will crumbled. The Queen's forces surged forward, driving them back through the gates. The battle was over. Ryan sank to the floor, the broken staff still in his hand. Blood stained his bandages, his breath came in ragged gasps, but he was alive. The child rushed to him, throwing its arms around him, pressing its face into his chest. The Queen approached, her weapon still glowing, her eyes fierce. She looked at the fallen rival, then at the human who had stood against him. Slowly, she lowered her weapon and spoke. You have done what even my strongest warriors could not. You stood when all else fell. You protected the air when death was certain. Ryan shook his head weakly. I only did what I promised. The Queen studied him, her sharp eyes softening for the first time. She looked at her child, then back at him. You are bound to us now. Whatever world you came from, whatever life you once lived, it is behind you. You are one of us. And I will not let you go. The hall was silent but for the sound of the child's quiet sobs against Ryan's chest. He closed his eyes, the weight of her words heavy, yet a strange peace settling over him. He had survived the trials, faced the enemy, and kept his promise. But he knew this was not the end. It was only the beginning of something greater. The battle was over, but the palace still carried the weight of war. Broken banners hung in the halls, the smell of smoke drifted through the air, and the stone floors bore the marks of blade and fire. Yet among the scars of conflict, there was silence. A silence that spoke of survival. Ryan sat against a pillar in the great hall, his body wrapped in fresh bandages, his broken staff lying at his side. Every muscle ached, every wound throbbed, yet he remained upright. His eyes moved across the room, watching as the Queen's soldiers tended to their fallen, repaired their weapons, and raised their banners once more. The child sat close to him, as if refusing to let even an inch of space form between them. Its small hands gripped his sleeve, its head rested against his arm. Despite the weariness in his body, Ryan could not help but feel a calm warmth in his chest. The Queen entered the hall. She carried herself with strength, her cloak flowing behind her, her crown catching the light of the fires. Every soldier turned and bowed as she passed, yet her eyes were fixed on only two figures, the human and her child. She approached slowly, her steps echoing on the stone. When she stopped before him, the hall grew silent. Even the soldiers paused their work, sensing that something greater was about to be spoken. "You have changed what I thought was unchangeable," the Queen said. Her voice was steady, yet beneath it was a softness that none had heard before. "You came to us as nothing. No weapon, no title, no power. Yet when the trials sought to break you, you stood. When the enemy came to take what was mine, you resisted. And when death reached for my child, you fought with your last breath." She lowered her head slightly, a gesture so rare that even her guards shifted in surprise. "For this, I owe you a debt that cannot be measured." Ryan looked up at her, his body still heavy with exhaustion. "I only did what I promised," he said quietly. "I told the child I would protect it. I kept that promise." The Queen studied him, her sharp eyes softening as she glanced at the little one who clung to him. "It seems the heir has chosen you as well. I cannot deny the bond you share. And I will not tear it apart." A murmur spread through the hall. Soldiers exchanged glances, their eyes wide. The Queen's words carried weight beyond any law or custom. She lifted her hand, her voice rising. "From this day forward, the human Ryan is no longer an outsider. He is protector of the heir, bound by blood and spirit. His place is here, beside the throne, for as long as he draws breath." The hall erupted in sound. Some cried out in disbelief, others in honor. Yet no one dared question the Queen's decree. Her word was final. The child's face lit with joy, and it embraced Ryan tightly. He closed his eyes, feeling the small warmth against him, and for the first time in many years, he allowed himself a smile. Later, when the hall had quieted and the soldiers had returned to their duties, the Queen remained with Ryan and her child. She stood close, her expression no longer that of a ruler, but of a mother. "You have given more than I asked," she said softly. "But I must ask again. Do you accept what I have given you? A place in a world not your own. A life tied to mine and to the heir. It will not be easy. You will face danger again. But you will never be alone." Ryan looked at her, then at the child whose eyes shone with hope. He thought of the valley he once called home, the quiet days of fixing machines, the life he had left behind. It seemed far away now, almost like a dream. What he had here was real. What he had here was purpose. "I accept," he said. The queen nodded slowly, as if she had expected no other answer. "Then it is settled." Days passed. The palace walls were rebuilt, the banners restored, the soldiers healed. But Ryan's place did not change. He walked the halls beside the child, trained with the guards, and learned the ways of their people. At first, many watched him with doubt, but in time, respect grew. They had seen him stand against death. They had seen him protect their heir when none else could. One evening, as the sun sank beyond the horizon, Ryan stood on a high balcony overlooking the city. Lights glimmered below, voices carried on the wind, and the stars shone above. The child stood at his side, pointing toward the sky, asking questions in its soft voice. Ryan listened, nodding, sometimes answering, sometimes only smiling. The queen joined them, her steps quiet. She stood near, her gaze fixed on the same sky. "You look at the stars often," she said. Ryan nodded. "They remind me of where I came from. But they also remind me of where I am now. Both are far, yet both are close." The queen studied him for a moment, then spoke. "Perhaps the stars guided you here for a reason. Perhaps they knew we needed you." Ryan did not answer at once. He looked at the child, then at the queen, then back at the endless night sky. At last, he said quietly, "Or perhaps I needed you." The queen's lips curved, not quite a smile, but something close. The night grew still, the city quiet beneath them, and for the first time since his journey began, Ryan felt truly at peace. He was no longer a wanderer, no longer a stranger among the stars. He was protector, guardian, and family. And in that role, he found something greater than survival. He found belonging.